Hello and welcome to the Uninspired Life podcast. This is the home of spiritual and also really raw human conversations that inspire us to stop talking about spirituality and actually live our divine truth. My name is Kiara O'Leary. I'm a divine change agent and a devoted stand for the undiluted power within each of us. And I'm your host. Every week I speak to an inspiring thought leader from around the world in an unscripted, we have no idea where it's going, totally intuitively guided conversation to bring you practical tips that you can apply immediately to create powerful shifts in your life. Each episode is also a potent transmission that will raise your vibration simply by listening. And I'm honored to share with you this week's guest, Lisa Murray. She's had burnout 3 times. Ended up in an abusive relationship as a result of ignoring her intuition and wanting to be nice. And she's now a creative badass who is an MBA-qualified, unconventional business coach, prolific writer, and a true embodiment of authentic, radiant joy. She's all about supporting entrepreneurs, change leaders, and creatives who are ready for the magic that is available when they give up hard work and allow new ways forward. And she literally is a living testament to that. And Lisa and I spoke all about living and speaking your truth. We talked about why we all need to start speaking up and out with fierce love for us and for the people we love, even if it's controversial at the time. How to set up permission with your close friends to speak the truth, call each other out, and hold each other accountable to the best version of yourselves. How to have difficult conversations in an open, authentic way that allows everyone to grow. The difference between being nice and being kind, and which one is actually an act of love. How to have fierce boundaries without being aggressive, and how this joyful petite woman terrified a big bikie man with this approach. How to balance learning from challenge whilst not relying on the challenge to learn. Why our resistance to our soul's path causes most of our suffering. How to notice if someone undermines us in such subtle ways that it's usually easily missed. The relationship between the narcissist and the empath and why the pattern is so seductive for them both. And then how to rise above even those labels and free yourself from the pattern. Why we're not here to fix anyone but invite them into a change. And how Lisa and I have both consciously manifested what we desired and then unconsciously resisted our desires from being allowed in. We shared so much about truly embodying and speaking up and speaking out in your truth and being fierce in the way that you love yourself and others. And I know that you're going to enjoy the podcast. So enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Lisa. I'm so excited to talk with you, especially because it feels like maybe there's some resistance around whatever we're going to end up talking about on this conversation, because our line has been a bit funny. So I'm keen to move through that and keep walking through that. So thank you for being on the show with me.
Thanks, Kiara. I'm so happy to be here today, actually.
Good. I am glad. You have such a joyful, joyous energy. And I have this feeling that it's not always been that way for you. So no. Okay, good. Well, no. Not good. I apologize. But I would love to hear the story so that the story will be good for everyone that's listening. Can you share it with us, please?
Yeah, it depends how much story you want, but let me start with this. Wow. So I worked in corporate. I had lots of different jobs and I had burnout 3 times. And the last time was very, very, very intense. Like I literally couldn't put a coherent sentence together. If you said something to me, I'd be like, what? What did you say? You know, there was just this. Yeah, my body was definitely not doing very well. You know, standing up was quite an effort a lot of the time. And so that took me on quite a journey. And, you know, and there's been lots of ups and downs in that journey. And yet I'm so very grateful for all of it because it's taken me to this space where I know, A, there's nothing I can't deal with. And then B, it's like well, would I have chosen what I've chosen if all those things didn't show up? And I just don't know if I would have. And I actually have now this very joyful, happy life that, you know, it shows me that you can have that whatever has gone on. You know, like at one point I lost everything, like literally everything, my house, my everything. And I just look at it now and I go, wow, that was pretty intense at the time, you know. And yet it didn't kill me, you know, it didn't actually. And really after I got over the initial sort of shock of the choice I'd made that had created all of that, I was like, oh, well, okay, what's next? You know, and I realized that really no matter what shows up, there's always a greater possibility available if we're willing to look for it. But if we get stuck in that past, you know, and I was stuck in there for a little while because, you know, I'd come out of a very abusive relationship and I was just a bit stuck in all of those energies because I'd forgotten who I was. And so you get to this space where you're like, well, who am I and what am I and what am I being and who was that was in that relationship, you know? Because it's like this, well, you know, but it really is like that because you look at yourself, you go, I don't remember being like that, but you knew you were in the relationship. And it's a response, like a stress response to, you know, living with someone who's abusive. And it was very interesting for me to see, wow, I made some pretty interesting decisions around that time that did have some big impacts in my life. And yet it also created a space where there's really nothing that can come to me that I'm not going to go, okay, cool, what do I do with this? And just move forward with it. Like I've learned how to not let that stop me.
Yeah, I love that. You know, just yesterday, I'm reading Entering the Castle by Caroline Myss at the moment, and I have been for months. I think it's one of those ones that you kind of can't just like zoom through. And I was entering some of the rooms around humiliation and just like exploring where we are so afraid of following our spiritual path because we are terrified of being humiliated by that. And then it came up again in the workshop yesterday. And I can imagine that one of the biggest fears that people have around following their spiritual path and their intuition is that what if they lose their house? What if their family falls apart? All of those things that you're saying that you went through anyway. Was that a result of your intuition or was that a result of ignoring the intuition?
Ignoring it. Very clearly ignoring it. Yeah, you know, people tried to tell me and I just didn't get it. I thought this guy was good for me. And it was only when I moved like everything to another city, moved in with him, that it became really clear that it wasn't good for me and it wasn't going to work. And yeah, it was pretty nasty and it got, you know, very messy. And the interesting thing is though, so in one sense, yes, I didn't follow my intuition because I can actually look back now and go, oh, there was at least 3 points where it was so clear I could have chosen something else. And I didn't. And part of that was I didn't want to say no after I'd said yes, which was a really interesting thing because, you know, you say to someone, yes, I'll move in with you. And then some things happen and I was like, oh, you know, that's not very nice. But because I'd already said yes, I didn't want to turn around and say no. And this is where I think we really fuck ourselves over and go, yeah, see, the F word, it's out already.
It's done. There is no going back, guys.
No, it's just who I am. Yeah, but we fuck ourselves over by thinking that we can't change our mind. You know, and if I'd followed what I knew at that point, my life would have been a lot easier for the next few years. And I also have to say, in one sense, I'm not sorry about that situation because what came out of it for me was that I will never be at the effect of anyone abusive, any sort of narcissist ever again. Like I'm so acutely clear of exactly how it all got created, all the patterns, all the choices I made. And I, you know, the energy of someone like that, I would recognize it so clearly now, you know, and that came with a lot of work. It wasn't a 2-minute, oh my gosh, I was living with a narcissist and no, I'm not. It wasn't quite like that, you know. It was a little bit more intense than that. But what I do want to say is that, you know, if you have one of those situations in your life where it all really does fall apart. For me, it was like, well, yeah, it's all fallen apart and everything, it was all connected. All the bits were connected. So everything really fell apart, you know. It was one pretty shitty year. And what's really interesting, though, is like when I look at it now, I go, well, wow, it taught me something that is invaluable. You know, it taught me never to put myself as less than any other person, and not to make myself more either, but literally to never put myself less so that I would end up suffering, you know. And that to me is invaluable. And I don't really care how much money it cost or what it cost, you know, because it's magic to live from that space now where I'm just like, oh no, no, you know, and I'm just so very clear.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to be aggressive about it. I can just be like, no. And the energy and I didn't really do it with you then, but the energy I can be with that no can be so distinct. People will just about run down the street, you know. So
you have this like gorgeous high vibe, and then you're like, no, that just like blows apart towns. That's what I see it as. You know, the end of a movie when the guy's walking away and he's just blown something up behind him and he's like pretending to be unfazed about it. That's how I see your note. I love that.
Well, it is actually. I can tell you quite a funny story. Do you want it?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so I went to Aldi once pretty much, because I don't really enjoy Aldi, and especially in Noosa, it's everything about it is just, I don't enjoy it. Anyway, the car park was very full this day, and a car moved out, and so I moved in, and I was sitting in my car just putting something in my bag or something, and next thing my car door opens, and I was like, what? Who's opening my car door? And there was this very, very angry bikie guy. And I just looked at him and I was a bit, you know how you have that moment where you're like, what? What's going on? And I was like, oh, and I just got out of the car very slowly, very intensely. And I stood up, and I'm like 5'4", you know, I'm not exactly intimidating from a size point of view. And I stood up and I looked at him and I said, what do you want? And I was really intense. And he's yelling at me because apparently I'd stolen his car park, but I don't know. It wasn't that clear to me that I'd stolen his car park. I think I was supposed to be a mind reader or something. I'm not entirely sure to this day. Anyway, he was yelling and yelling at me, and I just stood up and I just closed the door and started walking away because I thought, I'm not going to engage with this anymore. Anyway, I got inside and I was like, you know what? No, fuck this shit. I am not going to let someone like that think they got the better of me. So I stood just inside the door of the Aldi and I waited for him to come inside. And I just stared at him and I gave him every bit of energy I've got. And he was yelling at me. He said, stop looking at me. And he was really yelling. And he was like, the whole shop pretty much came to a standstill.
Wow.
And this poor woman that was with him, I just looked at her and all I did was give it, because I didn't want to talk to her because I realized it wasn't going to create anything. But I gave her the energy of, you do not have to live like that. You know, because I mean, I'm sure that if he was doing that to me, a perfect stranger, imagine what he was doing to her, you know. And it was so interesting because he was petrified, and it was such a beautiful day for me because, you know, well, you know, in the sense that I really truly got to know that even in the face of intense physical aggression, I would hold my energy. You know.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
And so. Yeah, no worries. And so now I'm just so very clear that, you know, fuck with me if you dare. And and it's actually just really, and you see, and this is what creates happiness, is knowing that you can handle yourself in any situation.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know I had that in me until that moment. And then I was like, oh, right. You know, and it was such a different part of me to show up.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't think about what to do either. It was just there.
I started my spiritual path as a way to attempt to control everything around me, which I think a lot of people do. We're like, oh, look, when you become spiritual, good things happen to you. Let's do that. And then maybe nothing bad will ever happen again. And eventually that kind of, you know, fell apart, as everyone who has listened to the podcast for a while knows. But what I learned from everything falling apart was that it didn't matter what was around me. It does not matter in my external conditions what happens. I know that I have got me throughout anything, literally anything, and that is like, that's what I guess makes it all worthwhile. And so I love to hear that you kind of seem like you have a similar approach, in that when life gives you lemons, you're like, shit, yes, I'm going to make the best out of this, like, you know. And also, I think it's really important that we know that we don't have to wait until something like that happens for us to learn the lesson. We don't have to cause the shit to go wrong in our lives for us to learn. But if it does happen because we didn't learn the first time, then like give yourself compassion and learn from that as well. So I just see everything as like, oh yeah, this was perfect. This was perfect. But so importantly, want to share with everyone as well that we don't have to wait for like after the three times that we're told to then like go, oh yeah, no, I really needed that like extensive thing to happen. Yeah, that we learn from it and we give ourselves compassion for it, but that we don't have to have that happen to be able to learn the lesson either.
And you know, that's the thing about, and this is what the burnout has given me actually, is the awareness that the moment I have any kind of tiredness or, you know, physical aches or pains, which isn't very often, but occasionally it's there, and it feels like burnout, but I know it's not now, right? Like there's a difference. But what it's given me is this awareness that that is my signal that something needs to change. It's my body saying, hi, something needs to change. You're not looking at it. And when I go to that energy of just going, okay, cool, what needs to change? It's usually really obvious. And so if you actually choose the change, you're absolutely right. You don't have to go through the really intense misery. You know, I'm just apparently like intensity, but you don't actually have to do that.
Yeah. Don't worry, I like intensity too. And do you know what? The reason that I caused the intensity is because I held on so tight to my idea of what I thought things should be like. And that's what caused the intensity of the pain so that I could learn the lesson. But if I was more open, then I wouldn't have had to do that. Can I ask, you know, when you said, after you said yes, you didn't want to say no, was that a fear of like changing your mind to the general public, or was that a fear of being not nice to your partner?
I would say it was 90% the second one and maybe about 10% the first one. And by the time I got to that point, I'd already moved half my stuff there, you know, like I was really, I'd rented my house. I was really in the throes of it at the time. But definitely I was, you know, when I say under the narcissist spell, it sounds horrible. But really that sense where, I was at that point already in that peacekeeping mode, which was the thing of the lessening of me. Definitely. Yeah. Because I think if I'd changed my mind, like, okay, put it this way, when I finally did leave him, so many people were so happy for me. And I'm like, could one of you have mentioned it? You know, like just one of you, maybe, you know, so everyone else could see it except me. And but, you know, and I think, you know, when you're a strong personality as well, you think you can fix anything. And I was used to fixing anything. You know, I was used to being able to deal with anything. And that is, of course, what a narcissist loves, because they want to break the person who is strong. And, you know, he gave it a good go, but no, he didn't break me. And I'm very happy about that too, you know.
Well, since you've brought it up so openly, I do feel like there are probably quite a few people who listen to this podcast that have read so many of those empath and narcissist articles that are going around online. So would you like to share what you've learned about the drawing in of the empath and the narcissist and how that pattern plays out?
Yeah, look, you know, a narcissist is brilliant in that they literally can see inside your world and see what it is you truly desire to have, and then they will glibly tell you they're going to give you all of that. And at the same time, they usually tell you all their problems, and you being the empath, of course, want to fix them. So it's, you know, it's a partnership made in heaven, except that it's not. And what's very interesting is that, it's like as empaths, we need to be clear that we're not here to fix people, actually. You know, it's our natural state, but actually we're not here to fix people. We're here to invite them to a change. And if they don't want to receive the change, then we need to let them go.
Mm. Mhm.
you know. And I see, like, back then I was very much in, of course, the things that he was, wanting me to fix, or, saying he wanted to fix, because actually more it's like saying they want to fix them, were very easy things to fix in my world. So in my world, I could see all his potential. And this is the thing, empaths usually see all their potential, all their brilliance, all their magic. But what they don't realize is that they're never going to give that to you.
Mm.
You know. So I mean, yeah, I've done a free telecall about this, and I'll send you the link, because it goes into some pretty full on stuff about how this all works. And if you want to add it into the show notes, you can, like, because it's a big topic. And what I just would say is that for empaths, you need to look at how you're not nurturing you. Because one thing I realized out of that whole situation was that narcissists only choose people who are brilliant but are not being the brilliance they truly are. So basically, yeah, I know it's a head fuck, but it's literally like, you are brilliant, but you're not owning it. You're not showing it to the world. You're not being it to a large degree. And so they go, oh, this person's brilliant, and I can mess with them, because they're not willing to actually love themselves. They're not willing to care for themselves,
Yeah.
and they're always going to give all their care to the narcissist. And so really, if you are brilliant, and most empaths are, that's just how it works, but if you're brilliant and you look after yourself and you care for yourself and you really nurture who you are and you are grateful for what you are, then narcissists won't come near you, because you won't be easy pickings for them, because you won't fall into those things, because you'll be going, hang on a minute, that's a real compromise of me and everything I am. No, thank you. But the moment they see that you don't go, no, thank you, is the moment that they go, oh, here's a good one. Off I go. And they,
Yes.
have all sorts of fun with you. Yeah.
And I believe as well that it's about the empath that knows how to take a stand for themselves and to believe in themselves, because otherwise the narcissist then can be the one that believes in you. And you're like, that person believes in me, and like they can see me like this, and I love being seen like this, which is a real draw card for the empath. But I also feel that the empath then can use that person to keep themselves stuck. Like if I spend so much time fixing the narcissist, then I don't have to focus on myself.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing is that the narcissist will simultaneously talk about your brilliance, give you all of that praise, all of that stuff, and at the same time undermine it. And that's the bit I totally did not see at the time. He was undermining me left, right, and center with my clients, with every event that I ran, everything. He was undermining it, but I didn't see it. And that, was the creation of not having a house and all these other things, because it cost me incredible amounts of money. And I just look at it and go, wow. So, and that was the other gift, really, is like, I won't allow people to undermine me anymore, and they can try, but it's not something I'm going to tolerate for very long. Like,
and how did that actually happen? Like, if I can feel the podcast audience going, have I been undermined and I don't even know it? So can you share an example maybe?
Well, when someone gives you a really backward compliment, so there was a lot of that, but the presentation of it was that, oh yeah, she's wonderful. But there was always this energetic undercurrent of but that he would put in there. Like, he would put doubt in people's mind, and he would want to talk to my clients, which at the time, I just thought he was taking an interest in everything I was creating. I never realized he was actually creeping them out in all sorts of different ways. And so there was a whole lot of other stuff going on that people told me about afterwards, which I'm just like, oh, wow, I wish someone would have mentioned that. And so this is the thing. If you're in this situation where you've got a friend who's in this situation, please find a way to mention it to them, because if I had realized he was saying some of the things he was saying, I would never have moved in with him, And so it's like there's this undermining comes from this. On the surface, they are very supportive, but underneath there's all of these things. And it's almost like saying, but privately they'll say to you, well, you think you're great at this, but you're not as great as you think, you know. And it's like on this, so publicly they'll be telling everyone how wonderful you are at that thing, while talking about the same thing to you privately and making you feel like you're hopeless at it or whatever, you know. And there's all sorts of different ways they do it. I mean, there's plenty of stuff on the internet you can look up about this, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And all I think I would like to say about it is, what if you valued yourself so much that no one could ever stop you?
You
know?
Yes, I agree. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And I also do want to kind of put like a bit of a disclaimer at the end of this empath and narcissist talk, because I asked the questions and I had the conversation because I can feel the podcast audience would love it. And I believe that any label is taking us further away from God. So the label of an empath and the label of a narcissist in general, we label things because it's easier to understand in our human situations. But that, you know, I believe everyone is an empath. Some are just more attuned to it than others, and that everyone has narcissistic tendencies, and some of them are just practicing it more than others. But I can see that it's a pattern, but I want to call out as well, like it's a choice to even see that pattern, and to we can raise our vibration so much that pattern doesn't play out, versus having to be involved in that pattern. So like empaths, just because you're an empath does not mean you have to play out the narcissist thing and go through it as well.
No. And you know, there's actually and we talked about this in the other class or call that I did. We talked about how narcissism is created energetically, and it's quite different to what the psychologists say. And so you can't make it wrong. And this is the other interesting thing. You can't make it wrong. You've just got to go to, okay, so that is that, this is this, and what are you going to choose? Because really it all just comes back to choice.
Yeah. You feel so empowering to listen to. I really like it.
Yeah, well, I guess, thank you.
My pleasure. Just want to highlight for everyone listening that this is a transmission of a woman who literally has like so much self-empowerment. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So Lisa, you did like a call out just before for people who are seeing these patterns in other people and not saying anything, like people let you keep living this without saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And one of the things that I've found to be really empowering in my own life lately is what I call fierce love letters. But it's really speaking the truth. So if I'm seeing a pattern in someone else and I don't appreciate that pattern, or I don't feel it's something I want to allow in my life, and it's something I would want to call out, someone else to call out in myself if it was there, then I'm calling it. And I'm actually telling them. So lots of spiritual people, and I will do a podcast probably myself on this as well. Lots of spiritual people will write like angry letters and then burn them and never send them. But I feel like it doesn't have to be angry, but that it's so important that we speak out and we say, hey, here's the pattern that I'm seeing, and I wanted you to know in case you'd like to do something about that pattern, which I'm guessing you would have liked to receive while you were in that relationship. Hey,
yeah, it would have been great if someone asked me a few questions about what I thought was going on. Let's put it that way. You know, but you know, and that's not making anyone that I know wrong either, because you know, I thought I was in love, they thought I was in love, they were happy to let me go where that led. And it's very interesting to look at that now and go. And it's interesting because one of the things that he said to me quite often is, well, you don't know what love is. And, you know, people only ever judge you for what they themselves are being and doing. That's one thing I am really clear about. And so in hindsight, I would go, oh, yeah, that's right, you don't. You know, but he did make me think that for a while. And so and that's the thing they do, is they make you second guess yourself. And if there's one thing that comes out of this conversation, it would be like, what if you did trust yourself? What if you actually got to this space where you trust what you know? And even if it sounds crazy, like I now am so willing to say the craziest things to people, because that's what I'm aware of. And I'll put a caveat on saying, hey, if this isn't, you know, light and expensive for you, then just totally ignore it. But have you sort of considered this, or what about this energy, and just that in itself allows for really different conversations. Because really what we're talking about here is having an authentic conversation where you're not trying to sort of put the marshmallows over the top, you're actually saying, hey, is there something I can contribute to you here that would maybe make this easier for you? Because I think those conversations are lacking a lot in friendships. I remember many years ago, I had one of those conversations with a friend whose boyfriend was playing up, and she really didn't want to know. And it caused a lot of havoc. And yet I just go, okay, well, that's her choice, And now I would probably go about it in a different way, because I kind of, I was fairly young and I just blurted it all out. Whereas now I would probably have a little bit more finesse about that. But it's just important, I think, to have the space too with your friends where they know, like my friends now know that they could totally say something to me, and that I would be grateful for it. And I wouldn't be going, you're mean and awful and stop trying to spoil my fun. I'd be literally like, no, thank you very much. So it's also about having the conversation before there's a problem with people, so that they know that they have got that permission to talk about what they see.
Yeah, I've given all of my friends permission to do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, call me out. If you see anything, I want to know. I want to see that so that it cannot hold me back. But you seem to have this real trust in yourself, so that if you're, and it's something I've literally probably only owned in the last 2 months, so it's really topical for us to be talking about it. If you're in a conversation and you feel the energy shift, or you hear that they're saying certain words but their energy is like not giving you that at all, and it's one of those times where we know and they know, but it's like almost not allowed to say it. Like, if you follow society standards, we're not meant to say, hey, your energy is saying one thing while your voice is saying another. But you, I know now, I mean, clearly you stood up to that like gangster bikie dude. So I know that you would be calling that out. So how do you recommend that people who are listening grow that self-trust and have those conversations?
Yeah. Look, part of it comes from doing a lot of facilitation with people. Like, I've done a lot of it, in the last 9 years. And so sometimes because for me, the awareness just comes literally as something fully formed. It doesn't come from thinking about it. And so usually, and there's kind of this particular energy that it comes with for me. So when that energy is there, it's so instinctive. And I guess, the good thing is I'm not quite the blurter I used to be. I used to be shocking for just like, here, have this, because, when I worked in corporate, I was always the one talking about the elephant in the room, for example, because it was just, I couldn't understand why everyone else didn't know why weren't they talking about this? Is the obvious thing, and why isn't anyone talking about it? And I realized they didn't want to know, actually. And if they did want to know, or they did know, they didn't want to talk about it. And so it took me a very long time to realize that what I instinctively know is not what other people even wish to know exists. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So when you have it where you've got a person in front of you, I usually put it in the form of a question. And I say to them, does this feel correct for you? Because that gives them choice, and it then empowers them to look at it or not as per their choice. Whereas if you just go, here, this is what I think. And, we've all seen the sort of psychic, relatively spiritual people who are like, well, my psychic channel tells me. And you're just like, thanks very much, because it's not delivered in a way the person can hear. And, I've spent a lot of time getting better at delivering information and awareness in ways that people can hear, and in ways they can receive, to the point where they can then make a choice to change. Because if you deliver it in a way that they can receive, then they have the choice, and you don't have to fix them. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to do anything for them except say, here, and, do with this what you would like to. So it's about being kind, actually. And the interesting thing about kindness, because I used to think kindness was niceness. And after that, experience with my ex-partner, I had a mentor oh my gosh, one day he literally just tore shreds off me. And he was like, you have to learn the difference between kindness and niceness. Because after that, I ended up with a stalker. And I was like, oh, and I rang him out because I knew he had a bit of experience. And I'm like, okay, can you help me out? I've got a stalker. And he's just like, okay, we need to sort this because someone's going to kill you if we don't sort it, you know?
Yes.
He was really, and he didn't say it that nicely. He was really direct. He was like, you know, lady, like someone will kill you. And he wasn't joking. He was totally serious. And I respected that because I needed the strong talk. And I also needed to know what the difference was because to me, they were the same thing. And so kindness is saying what needs to be said, but you don't have to do it with meanness, you know. And because he gave me, oh, sorry, start that again. He said to me, well, how are you telling the stalker to go away? And I told him, he goes, he wouldn't even hear that. It's way too nice. And that was the same niceness that kept me in that situation, you know, and in that first situation. And so it's very interesting to look at and go, so kindness is about really being willing to say what needs to be said and being willing for the person to hate you, being willing for them to walk away, being willing for them, you know, to choose whatever response they choose. And this isn't to say you dump your point of view on them, because it's not that either, but it's looking at, well, what can they hear and doing your best to deliver that, you know. And I'm grateful for some of the strong talks I've been given over the years. They've definitely made a difference to me. Do I enjoy them in the moment? Not necessarily, but I'm always willing to look at, you know, what that conversation is about. And inevitably there's something there to change.
I had one of my friends call me out just last night. He said that he thinks I ponder too much and that I could use some time just being, and then like maybe go a whole week without even reflecting at all. And then I can reflect at the end of the week. And I was like, I don't have time for that. That's silly. I probably don't reflect anyway, like that much. And then I went, oh, have you heard how resistant you are to hearing this information? And so I wrote back and I'm like, I really am angry at you right now. And that's how I know I need to hear this right now. So thank you. I will take that on board. And in the same token, when I feel something, I share it, and I share it in a way that I hope that is like I'm getting better and better at having it be received by the other person. And if they're the kind of people who are going to like, get angry at me or shut me out for having shared that, kind of not the relationship that I want anyway, in any form, like whether it's working or friends or whatever. So I think it's so important that we are willing to let them go when we have those communications. Like if we're holding on to anyone, being able to speak our truth is going to be harder. And also probably the most important then in those things, that's where we need to be speaking our truth. But it does take, I think, a willingness to let them go if it doesn't work out the way that we want it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, like I used to try so hard to hold on to all the people in my life, you know, part of how I held on to my ex in some ways. And yet when I look at it, when I've been willing to just go, okay, if you're leaving my life, that's fine, you know, have a good life, that energy creates so much more. And it also leaves people the freedom to come back when they change, if they change, you know. And I like leaving the door open in that sense of just allowing people to know that, okay, sure, if it's not good for right now, but maybe it will be in the future. And, you know, sure, just talk to me when you're ready, you know. And that, yeah, it does. It's a real gift, I think, when people are willing to be that non-sort of judgmental with you, because it actually just allows this space where everyone has choice. Because I think the thing is, you only hold on to people, or you only hold on to how they should be if you want to control it. You know, you're talking about control before. This is yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got me.
Little miscontrol freak number 1 and little miscontrol freak number 2. And you know, and it's funny because like I think I've worked on this my entire life, and am I any better? I have no idea. But what I do see is that I'm more willing for things to change now than ever before, and that's a really good start in the process.
Yeah. And if you're not willing for things to change, how exhausting is that?
Well, that's called burnout in my life, you know. Yeah, it totally is. It totally is, yeah. And, you know, I think the thing too with just when you allow things to change, most people have this point of view that change has to be worse than what you've got now. And what I know is that so much change is possible. Like, it brings something greater, but we've got to be willing to let go of what we think is good or what we've decided is right, you know. And, you know, for me, that was always the thing, is I would get to the best thing I knew at the time and decide that was the answer, and then fight everything that tried to stop me having something greater, you know, which is totally insane. And we all do it.
Lisa, I am exactly the same. My life has been like, so I got to this point where I was like, oh, this is the man I'm going to marry and blah, blah. And then I realized it wasn't, and I fought like mad for that. I was like, no, and tried to stay. And then everything fell apart, and then everything fell back together again. And I was like, oh, okay, it's finally happened. Yes, hold on to this really tight. And I forgot that the last time that everything fell apart, it became heaps better than I'd had, like, even in my wildest dreams. So I was holding on to what I thought was good, not realizing how much better it could get. And then I did the exact same thing, and then it fell apart again. And now I'm in the, whoa, how did it get so much better stage? But we do need to remember that, like, the infinite intelligence around us literally knows what we want way better than we could ever know what we desire. And it is always working to bring that to us. But we just get in our own way when we hold on to what we think we want in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. And this is, it's a work in progress for me, because there's sometimes when I just want to do something, you know, and this has been in my business, I think, very much. I get ideas and I really want to do them, even though maybe the energy isn't there to do them, because I love the idea so much. And I've noticed that it actually works so much better when I just go, okay, which of your ideas is next? Because they always identify themselves, you know, and then literally I do that thing, and then there's a flow from that. You know, like, I've, after a lot of resistance, committed to finishing writing the book about burnout. And it's really funny because, like, it's literally been like 8 years of resistance, because I was like, oh, I'm finished with that. I don't want to talk about that anymore. But the funny thing is that the world wants me to talk about it. And no matter how much I might be bored by it, the world does require the information. And because I have a very different perspective on it. And what's been very interesting is literally almost ever since I went to it, okay, I'm going to write you, I'm going to finish you, get you out in the world really quickly. Ever since then, so much stuff has been coming effortlessly, like interviews, all sorts of different things. Everything has just been coming for this book, as if to say, there is nothing that will, you know, you will create this, because there's so much support for it that you cannot not create it, you know. And I think that's the thing, is when we stop the control and we actually just sort of step into that flow, then there is this real beauty where all the things that you've got in your head that you think will be hard, that you think will be too much work or too much effort or whatever it might be, it's not actually like that at all, because you've stepped into the flow.
Yes. My gosh, how many stories do you hear of people going, no, I didn't, like, they're like celebrity success stories. They're like, no, I didn't want to do that at all. And then it just kept coming. And so I was like, fine, okay. And then poosh, everything just exploded, and it's everything I've ever wanted all the time. You are in like in a celebrity success story right now, Lisa.
Maybe, who knows?
I think so. You heard it here first on Uninspired Life podcast. Lisa, celebrity success story.
You're funny.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I do have a plan, maybe not for celebrity as such, but I do have something that I know is there for me once this burnout book is done. So we'll see where it goes.
Good luck with plans, though, because I don't know about you, but mine keep getting changed.
Oh, yeah. It's not really a plan. Maybe I should have called an awareness of what's after the burnout book.
Yes,
maybe that would be more accurate.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And it would, where the divine is going to take you, and it's not your plan, it's the divine's plan for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I've been aware of it for quite a while as well. And I'm like, okay, I'm coming now, getting closer.
Okay, I'm not as terrified of how awesome I am and how powerful I am anymore. So, all right, let's do it.
That's pretty much it. Yep.
Yeah. Lisa, do you know, I can't believe this, but we are already, like, we're meant to finish up now. I can't believe that.
All right.
It's gone so fast. So we haven't even had a chance to talk about creative, like, energy or burnout or nurturing or any of those amazing things that you are so well known for. So can you tell people how they can come and find you and learn more about that?
Yes, sure. If you go to Creative Alchemy with an I on the end, not a Y, .com, you will find everything there. And I am quite the multi-creative person. So there's all sorts of adventures to be had there.
Awesome. Well, we are about to go over and do your secret episode, which is the behind the scenes of your life. And I think I'm going to ask a few questions about your creative pursuits and energy and how you use that in that part as well. Because I want to know about this creative stuff. But, we couldn't tell the divine what to choose to talk about today. And all of that just came out. So it must be what needed to be heard.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably people need to hear it. That's usually what happens, because I don't actively go talking about that whole stuff, but it seems like when it's required, it literally just falls out of my mouth. So,
everyone knows who has listened to this podcast for a while that all we do, we set an intention at the start and then we let whatever come through for you. And it's always a transmission that we're actually like energetically exchanging. So I hope that everyone has received, I know that everyone has received a transmission of truly trusting in yourself and knowing that you can speak up and that is kindness and that we don't have to be nice anymore. No more Mr. Nice Guy. This is kindness instead. What an incredible chat with Lisa. I loved it so much and I hope that you did as well. I really loved how she is so joyous and radiant and yet so good at boundaries and like not able to be fucked with at the same time. True living testament to fierce love and the way that they actually can combine together. But Lisa and I did not stop talking there. We went over and recorded this secret episode after that. And we talked about how Lisa plays with energy and has fun cultivating her desires when she wakes up in the morning. How she turns her body on with earth energy and brings that sensuality into her day. How Lisa relates to the field of infinite creative intelligence that we all have access to. How she moves from tired to joyous, overflowing and creative again. And so many other behind the scenes things in Lisa's life to be that living testament to fierce love that we see today. And you can get access to that secret episode at uninspiredlife.com.au/secret. You get access to Lisa Murray's secret episode behind the scenes and all of the other ones that I've ever done by going to uninspiredlife.com.au/secret. If you have enjoyed this podcast and you feel like there's someone in your life right now who might need to know the power of speaking up and speaking out into their truth, then I invite you to hit share and tell other people about this, because just doing that one act that seems so small to you at the time can really shift completely someone that you love and care about's life. So please hit share. I would love it, and I'm sure that they will love it too. And lastly, if you would like to join a tribe of people who are committed to and devoted to being the best version of themselves and to bringing more light into this planet, then you are so welcome to come and join a safe and sacred space on Facebook called Lightworkers Rising. You can search it in the search bar, or you can go to facebook.com/groups/Lightworkers Rising. And there are already hundreds of us in there who support and love each other as we rise up and shine as our brightest, most amazing divine selves. So we would love to see you in there. And we can also continue the conversation. If you have any questions, or you want to share with us what you got out of this podcast, then head on over to do that as well. Thank you so much. My name is Kiara. I am honored to be your host on this podcast, and you can find out more about me at uninspiredlife.com.au. If you want to reach out and connect, I love to hear from you about your experience listening to the podcast. Thank you. Have an incredible week being your most radiant, fierce, loving selves, and I will chat to you next week. Bye for now.